It's just like an ask one. He supported UKIP.
No.
It's like someone supporting, I don't know, I'm trying to
KKK.
relate it to something like that.
Nice.
So there's just such an ask. He was like, oh, nobody's gonna vote for you. So he was running for president.
Oh.
And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna drop this vice president
I'm
against
president.
you. And I competed and I won over him. And I was like,
So you did it for the pride as opposed for...
yeah, that's the thing. I didn't.
Sick.
I don't want it.
I wanted to do the work. I didn't want the position. So I ended up then doing that, and that was stressful. Ooh, this is so much better.
Yeah.
100 times.
Yeah. So we were all set up and ready.
Yay.
As soon as we're ready to go. Right.
Where's the
Are we all
phone?
cool? Oh, you can't see anything.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah. The reason I did it like that is because if my phone goes off, then it disconnects, and I don't want it to stop it from recording.
Your phone has no charge.
Oh no. What I mean is if
Someone calls.
Okay, so something
anything.
happened. Okay.
Yeah, because the app is connected, and I prefer it like that because then I can actually play more around the color grading. But it's recording, right?
Yes.
Could you just quickly run over to the computer and have a look if there's stuff showing, if it's moving and recording? Put on the earphones if you want. Can you hear my voice? Yes. Clean? Yes. Yeah, safe. Right. Is it showing that it's like recording? Yes. Yeah. We said. This is actually so lit.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah. It's my podcast. It's always lit. Always lit. Lol. I'm dead. Yeah. I'm dead.
Oh my God.
This is definitely gonna be such a dope intro. But
You said interview. See that?
intro. I said intro. Come on, man.
Like, oh.
It ain't an interview. You're not that intro. I'm just kidding.
You know. Oh. Wow.
10 years from now, you're gonna be like, oh, I once had
know,
her on my
right?
podcast. And I'll be like, sorry,
When she's an investor in your company.
I mean-
I know Moyra, but a man, what? Who?
I mean, I'll take credit for having you on the first podcast, so that's chill. Right, let's actually have a proper intro. Hey guys, welcome back to the Everything Post podcast. Why are you laughing? This is episode 7, I believe. And yeah, we're in a completely new place, new setup, new people. Yeah, it's a bit crazy. And today we have with us, introduce yourself. Insert name here.
Deborah.
Go on.
Yeah, Deborah.
Oh, sick. Yeah. she's here all the way from Canada.
Yeah.
Not specifically for the podcast, but I mean, we just for the story, we could just choose to say it's for the podcast. But yeah, how you doing?
Good.
We're chilling, and we've got Moyra behind the camera. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, she's basically the Parks of this episode. She has no clue who Parks is.
The pot.
Parks.
Oh.
So basically, long story short, Joe Budden has a podcast, and the person who mans the sound and stuff is Parks, and he stays off of the. Yeah, it's pretty sick. Yeah.
People always at the background, they make everything work.
Well, you say that
makes you happy,
it would probably be
sorry.
working even if you weren't there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you guys were talking about her hair earlier, right?
Yeah, because Deborah's
Yeah.
starting a podcast.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about that before we go on to hair because they kind of interlock, don't they? You see what I did there?
Yeah,
I was kidding.
law.
I'm gonna just shoot myself. Yeah. So in terms of your podcast, I know you've mentioned earlier like what you want to do in terms of setting up the theme and kind of how it goes. But yeah, would you want to kind of expatiate as to what the podcast is going to be about and the inspiration behind it?
I don't know if there's like an inspiration. I just love talking. So it's
Sick.
just fucking
I mean, that's why the Everything Post podcast is here. But
it's also like I'm just genuinely like fascinated by people. I mean, I'm here, I really don't have any reason to be in Bath, but it's just like, I'm just like intrigued by the way people's minds work, and just like, it's just wow. Like, just people have different opinions about different things, like what they find funny, what they think is like sad. Like, for example, I think someone like getting hit by a bus,
Whoa.
like maybe not dying, like
What's
not
going on?
but like, if I, like,
Yo,
but
it was,
if I
bruh.
saw someone get hit by a bus, I
Yeah.
would laugh. Like,
Is that like, wait, is that like the funny kind of laugh? Like, haha, that's
just
funny.
like, oh
or
my
like,
gosh, that's so
damn,
sad.
that's
Like-
crazy. But I'ma still laugh. Like the ironic funny.
like
Yeah.
I'm just like, wow, that's wild. Like, he just got hit by a bus.
Like dead ass.
What just happened? So that's what I'm saying. Like, different
so
people
gone.
have different humor,
Yeah.
and just like exploring that. And with the Just Another Black Girl podcast, like,
By the way, that's the name of a podcast.
like for the longest time we used to talk about how there's like underrepresentation of racialized people in like the media and stuff, but it's now 2019. Like, every other Black person you know is doing something, which
Yeah.
is great. So it's just like, I'm just another one.
Support a black business and a white business because
Every
equality.
business.
Big facts.
Yeah, so it's just like just another Black girl talking about hair. Like, every other Black girl is talking about their hair, their texture, but like there's nothing really special about it in that sense. But it's special to me, and I'm excited for it. So.
Oh, lit. Is there any like kind of way of kind of introducing guys to that, or is it just like a discriminatory?
Oh, it's gonna be with guys. So it's not just even about
Just kidding.
hair. Like,
Okay.
it's gonna be like, so the title of it is Just Another Black Girl. So it'd be like just another Black girl talking about relationships.
Oh, okay.
And then just another Black girl talking about God. So
All right.
then I'd have like people on the show
Pretty much what I'm doing.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Forerunners, blueprint vibes.
Yeah. So
That's
it'd be like
pretty lit.
just another Black girl chatting with a white dude. Like, do you know what I mean? And just like,
Yeah,
just
literally.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Damn, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Nah, but in terms of like hair, what is so exciting about hair? Well, that sounds like such a vague, pointless question. But what causes hair to have such an influence in terms of this podcast, for instance, and like a lot of stuff you're into? Like, where were you introduced to this sort of thing? Because like Moyra is super like addicted to the whole natural hair movement, and I'm not 100% sure where that spawned from, but like surely there must have been like some point where it was introduced.
I've always been fascinated by hair. Like, even in my like immediate family, like I was talking more about hair texture. Like, my sister and my mom have very thick hair, and even growing up, right now my mom is on like a low afro cut kind of thing, but she's always changed her hair. Like, she used to have like a bob, and then she did like a pixie cut, and then like my mom was always changing her hair. And like, I always had natural hair, but I never really appreciated my hair because like back in the day, no one really knew what to do with it. Like, they left us natural, but they didn't know how to take care of our natural hair. Like, the hair just is,
Yeah, I think hair is a big thing in general for brown Black women.
Yeah.
It's just in society. I feel like it says a lot about you.
It is.
Like,
It's a
you can be
statement.
like, oh, how does that person? You can look at a person and be like, oh, I know that person's got money because I know what they have on their hair.
Yikes.
I know what they've done. Like, hair tells you a lot
It's so
about a
much.
person.
Like, you can tell if a person like even for myself, like, not that this is even related, but like one of my criteria with guys is like, if your hair is not like combed, or like if you have like a dread, like whatever you have going on with your hair, like
better
if
be
it's
neat.
clean, like if like you like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's a part of your outfit. Like, it either dresses you up or down, or like.
And somehow I feel like sometimes it can be looked at as almost like a part of our identity.
To
some extent,
So I think when the whole natural movement started, it was kind of like claiming back
I was
who we
pissed
were.
by that. Sorry, like, because I don't know. Did you have natural hair growing up? So I did, and then like all of a sudden, all these
Everyone
people
wants to be
who
natural.
and I'm like, what?
But I
Like,
was always
like no one thought I was special.
I know, it was special not to be natural.
Like,
So-
people used to be like, why aren't you relaxing your hair? And then everyone's all of a sudden then wanted to be natural, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
so
why?
Yeah, no, I think it's just very much a cultural thing. It's very much it, I guess.
Speaking to the mic.
There's a lot of, I don't know, I think there's a lot of history to a lot of certain hairstyles. There's a lot of history to using texturizers and relaxers and things that are actually damaging our hair in order to make it, I don't know, in order to make it look straighter, more Western. So,
like, even with that, like, I do know this, but a friend had done like a portrait of me with my afro out. And when she was posting, because she's an artist, and then she sells them, and the story behind that one for her was apparently like in the 17th century when African women had their hair out, they were told not to because it attracted Western men. And it was like seductive or something like that. So like they weren't allowed to like wear it out. And I was like, I had no idea. Like, can you imagine someone now telling me not like
say it again?
Which is also, I think, a massive thing, because weirdly, like, women, hair has actually been a way of controlling some women. It's like you go to a certain job, they're like, don't have this hairstyle, or currently in Nigeria you have kids being told this is the hairstyle you have to wear, or schools where you're not allowed to grow your hair, you have to cut your hair.
That's a shout. I didn't even remember that was a thing.
It's a thing.
That is a thing.
That's so crazy.
It really is, because
to some extent I think it's a problem when it's aimed mainly at females.
It usually is.
And I think that is because, for instance, guys usually have just a basic haircut. Like in schools, for instance, let's use St. Mark's as an example. They didn't want guys to have their hairs, certain haircuts you couldn't have. So in terms of that, I could understand that, because there's I guess it might not be the most freeing or liberating thing, but there's to some extent an aesthetic they want to keep in terms of what their school is like. They might not feel this hairstyle is quite neat, but then it raises a question: who decides what hairstyle isn't neat enough? Who decides exactly? So I think that's where it gets tricky. But to some extent, I could see where.
I think, well, I wouldn't really compare a Nigerian school to a school
True,
here.
because completely, it's just completely different.
I would understand when a school says, don't color your hair.
See, that's understandable.
I get that,
but even that is like subjective, because then if you have a kid who's like who has maybe brown hair, because there are people who have brown hair naturally, and then they don't get that, so they're like, oh, like, because there are like naive people who wouldn't realize that a black person can have brown hair and would be like, oh no, you have to go dye your hair brown. Like I did have like at a high school I went to in like Benin, but it was a Nigerian school, like we had someone who had brown hair and they were like, nah, and it's just like, but that's their natural hair. And my bigger problem with that in terms of the girls is like, that's why you have some people who are 18 or older who don't know how to take care of their hair, because for 6 years of their lives they were told not to grow it. They weren't taught how to take care of it, how to style it. So now you have these people in the real world, and it's just like they've never had to do anything to their hair, but now you have all these expectations for them to like have fabulous hair all the time. It's just not fair or realistic. I don't know, but
it's quite interesting. Yeah, because obviously as a guy, that it's not something. Well, I pay more attention to it now than I probably have done in like a couple years. And I mean, you don't want to be caught out slipping. You can't get caught without a fade, without shape up, without a lot of this. Wait, what?
I have a pet peeve.
Okay.
You know when guys have like a fade and they have like dreads, but then they have like frosted tips?
What do you mean frosted tips?
Like they dye the tips blonde. I'm just like, why? There's literally no reason why this should be a thing. Like,
I'm dead.
I told you this was a great idea.
I mean, sometimes it looks cool.
I think different people can pull off different things.
Exactly. True.
But there's a lot of people
there's some people that would really rock. It's just like random, but XXXTentacion. He had that whole dread thing where half of it was.
Yeah,
what?
I was very fond of him as a person.
No, like he had the whole thing where half the dreads was like a orangish color, and then the other half was black. Like, no normal person will pull that off.
Yeah.
But he pulled it off in a way that it became a stamp for him, specifically.
For him.
So like, if anyone else does it, it's going to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So to some extent, I could roll with it.
I mean, as long as people are
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan.
I mean, personally, my one is when they like slightly bleach the top of it when it's like I don't know, flat top or like the curly top, and then they bleach just the edges. That, like, in my opinion,
Like the
is
tips
a
of it.
F-boy haircut. And like, I'm sorry, so many of my friends have rocked and probably are rocking it right now, but I'm sorry, that's what I think of you. Moving on.
Okay.
It is quite weird how a hair can tell you actually.
Exactly.
But see, that's
It's
not good though.
it's
I feel like that's not
because
good,
then
but
you're
it's weird.
justifying
Right.
those people who, like, when as a black girl you wear your afro to the workplace and they tell you that it looks untidy. Then you saying that is kind of similar to what they're saying. There's no difference.
Okay, here's what I personally think. I think that to some extent, as human beings, it's a natural thing to categorize things based on numbers. Like, okay, so like it's a survival instinct. If I've been, I don't know, attacked by 5 white people, the next white person I'm gonna see, I'm going to be a lot more careful around them. The same way that I look at, let's say, places like America. Obviously, I haven't been there, so this is running off of like hypothetical. Someone gets attacked by multiple black people, so they are naturally going to be a lot more cautious about interacting with black people. Not necessarily because black people are a certain way, all the black people they've come across are a certain way. So when it comes to the hair thing, I think it's more about how you react to it and like checking it as opposed to the reaction itself. Because it's like, in terms of the haircut thing, that one's a bit stupid, but like it to some extent categorizes people like skinheads, like skinheads. I mean, there's not much to say about that, but there's certain things they move and act like that categorizes them as a group. Just the same way being Nigerian, there's certain things that would single you out as a Nigerian that another country probably wouldn't have. So I'm slightly deviating from that specific thing,
and I am going
I feel like it's wrong to like look at it and say, oh, because I've had social experiences with people with this specific type of hair or black people, that I should then treat every black person like they're exactly the same.
I definitely get it. I feel like
it's understandable,
honestly,
but not
these
acceptable.
Things in like discrimination and the lack of it or whatever, like just in general in society, I feel like everything is just a cycle. Like it's an unending cycle, and I don't know that that's ever going to change, because then it's like someone does something to you, and then for that reason you start to have like feelings of hate or whatever towards that person and anyone associated with them. But people associated with them are usually people who look or act like them. So then it's just like it's just the constant unending like categorization of people based on some experience you've had, or even vicarious experiences. Like if my friend has told me something about someone, I'm just like, yeah, no, not messing with that. So it's just like, I don't know that that's ever gonna change, you know?
Personally, I didn't think it would. And is it necessarily a bad thing that it exists, as opposed to being a bad thing that people react to it the way it does? They do, if you get what that means. Because it's like, bad isn't, oh yikes, bad things, like that whole concept of you can't really appreciate good without bad, but it's not necessarily that we want there to be bad, but the existence of bad kind of makes good as it is. So I don't necessarily think we shouldn't have it. I just think we should react to it differently, and that's on both sides.
And it's also the way like,
and obviously I do understand that I'm speaking to black women, so their experiences of life are obviously a lot worse than most. So that is,
because the way I always describe it is like at every point in time, just from me being me without having to say anything, I constantly have sexism and racism as like forms of discrimination against me, like without me having to do anything, just being in a room alone. Like those two things are constantly always going to work on against me. And sometimes they do work for me. But then again, then when you open your mouth, it's like, oh, then you're African. Like, you're not just black, but you're from Nigeria. It's like, whoa.
Whoa. Gotta keep my wallet close.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's interesting. What you said about sometimes it works for you. Mm-hmm. Would you class it working for you as a good thing?
See, I think it depends. Because I was having this conversation the other day. I don't know if I had this conversation with you. Where, like, there's a time where I got a job. And it was like, I don't know.
Wait, sorry. Were you the one I was having that positive discrimination conversation with?
I feel like it could have been one of you. Like, I'm not sure, maybe.
It probably was. But continue what you're saying.
But it was like, I wasn't sure if I got it because they really liked me or because I was black and they just needed diversity. And that made me, I hate having to question my abilities. Because I like to think I'm good at what I do, if I'm doing something. But
if I do it well, I want
but
to
then
be
I don't know
taken on because I did it well.
Yes, exactly.
As opposed to be, it's just another black person to fill a spot.
Exactly.
I don't want to, one of the last things I want to be is a token black person.
But then again, I'm like, I'm looking for a job, so I'm a black person. Like, just give it to me. Like, you need me. But then it's like, it's a bit like, it's a sticky one. It's a sticky one still. You have a sticky one.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if it was you, but I've had this conversation with a couple of people, that whole idea that it's not possible to have positive discrimination because discrimination in itself is something that is wrong. So to have a positive wrong is just doesn't make sense. Whereas reverse discrimination, on the other hand, or at least
does not exist. Disclaimer.
Sorry?
Reverse discrimination.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
What?
It's like when people say reverse racism. It's like, nothing. But continue. Sorry.
I'm confused.
Do you get what I mean?
Specifically, in terms of the discrimination thing, is like in terms of the way it's phrased, positive discrimination, what it says sounds wrong. Like it's not correct grammatically, or based on what those two words mean in exactly oxymoron. Yeah. What those two things mean in the dictionary. But reverse discrimination, on the other hand, to reverse something is to go the opposite. So reverse discrimination wouldn't
isn't that just acceptance then?
What?
Yeah.
Would it?
Like, why wouldn't we just
call it? Why does discrimination?
If we talk about like discrimination in the sense of, let's talk about like someone in a wheelchair. The buses, people who have wheelchairs have priority.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're all human. Why don't we? But that, in my opinion, like, I don't really care what it's
I see.
Like, it's like,
it's
but we're all human. Why do I have to get out of my seat because someone with a wheelchair comes in? It's like they already have a problem and they're already put under because of certain conditions. Okay. So we're lifting. It's not. We're not putting them above other people.
We're giving them the same opportunity.
We're compensation essentially.
Yeah. It's like
we're compensating for
slightly higher position to order to level the playing field.
It's interesting that you use that example. I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm doing like a certificate in disability
management. I thought you were about to say you're disabled. And I was like, oh, snap.
There are. I'm not. I don't.
Not that I discriminate or nothing. It's just
but we have like social, social and medical like ways of looking at disability, and the medical way is thinking of it as it being the person's problem and they're supposed to conform to society, while the social way of looking at it is like the society is not adapted to the person. Like, it's not the person living with the disability is not their fault. Like, society needs to change and adapt to them the way it's adapted to everyone else, because society was built to meet everyone else's needs. So like with the bus situation, that's social way of dealing with disability, because then they need more space to make sure their chair is secure. Like, you, who is an able-bodied person, holds onto the ring and you're fine, but their chair is just gonna move. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's very interesting though. Yeah.
I haven't actually looked at it like that in terms of that whole, isn't that just acceptance as opposed to a whole different thing? That's really interesting. That's pretty mad. But like I was saying earlier, what do y'all think about Theresa May crying?
Crying?
Yeah.
Okay. My thing is...
Crocodile tears or not? Nah, go for it.
It's a bit 50-50. Again, I don't know too much about British politics. I do try to follow it since I've been here, because, like, Brexit and whatever. But, like, I do feel like it couldn't have been an easy decision for her to make. Like,
okay.
That's a position of power. You don't just give away power. Like, it's not something...
It's not yours.
But it's a power you possess in the moment, and you only possess it for like
bestowed.
A specific period of time. So I'm not just gonna give it up like prematurely. Like, do you know what I mean? That must have taken a lot of like thinking. This, like, it's a whole like country. It's a whole colonizer. Like,
whoa! I'm dead. Colony. Let's go.
Like, you don't just give it up. Like, it must have been so emotional for her. So I don't think it was like crocodile tears. Like,
the thing is, I think she was passionate. I think she was passionate, and I think that her passion was coming through. I really am not moved, because
at all.
I'm like, there were other situations where, like, there are other people going through so much other stuff. Like, I don't look at her and feel, oh my God, you're going through so much.
Okay.
Like, we look
She's
at
broken though.
See,
it's
with
like,
that though, it's the way like when you have something wrong with you and you're in conversation with someone and they're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm sorry, I was even telling you about my problems. I don't think like because people are going through more than other people, it makes like my situation like
problems
less
are problems.
significant.
Yeah, for sure.
Not any less significant, but I'm just talking about like in terms of her policies. And there were just a lot of things that she did that, like, there's a lot of things that she did and a lot of policies she created and a lot of ways she dealt with stuff that I didn't agree with. So it's not like I would have wanted her to come out with a better what's the word?
Execution.
Yeah, just because I feel like she tried, and I
She
don't
did.
think there's anything wrong with trying. She tried. She put a lot of effort,
Yeah.
and she wanted to bring, and she was not dealt the best cards. Like, I don't
For
think
sure.
anyone
The time period she even came in was probably one of the worst that you could have potentially come in. Yeah, he's such a waste man. He's the one we should bring, huh? What?
Yo, we can get deported.
No, I don't give a damn. He's actually a waste man.
Because to come back to England.
Because he did.
I didn't say anything.
I'm dead. He did what he did, and he created a mess, and then just stepped away and left it for someone else to
I appreciate though, like after she resigned, because he was interviewed. I don't know if you guys watched it, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna say anything about her governance," and I appreciate that because he could have, and like that would have been a whole other thing. Like she's already dealing with enough, so I appreciate that he respected her enough to not say.
I don't think he's even afforded.
Yeah, I don't think,
that. Who cares? Who cares what your opinion is?
Yeah.
If you have an opinion, you should have done something about it. Like, in my opinion, I think, yes, fair enough that he was following through with what he said. One of the few politicians usually don't follow through what they say. But he followed through what he said. He said if, what was it? If he was voted in again, he was going to give them a general election. Was it? Sorry. Referendum or whatever it was. But he followed through with it. So fair play for following through with it, but you're an idiot for actually giving that option in the first place, because then you created a problem to get yourself in power because you knew if you gave them this option they would vote for you, and then as soon as you were done you left the mess for someone else to take care of. And fair play to her for stepping up, because obviously this whole thing of second female prime, I don't care whether you're a woman or not, but what was interesting though was her showing emotion for the first time.
For the first time,
I thought that was quite interesting because the whole time she's got that whole stone cold awkward thing about her.
It's because she's a woman. Like that's why we even care about her showing emotion.
Oh no!
If it was a man, who would care if he cried?
I don't know about you.
If it was a man, then I think people would have been feeling sad for him.
They would have probably ridiculed.
But then because she's a woman, you're expecting her to. Like,
whoa! Just listen to what you just said. So if it was a man that stood in front of that pulpit
and he cried, people would have
and
felt
he
more
cried
compassion.
that he came to a job, he tried, he didn't
up.
achieve what he did, and he was crying. My gosh, bruh, are you kidding me?
People would. Do you know how
you would get ridiculed worse than she is?
No, I don't think so.
This whole toxic masculinity thing, you're
but
crying
that's the thing, there's
because
now a shift.
you were asked to step down.
But then, see,
My
that's the
God.
thing. I feel
Imagine Boris Johnson
I feel
crying.
like we need to.
I feel like no one's going to feel sorry for anything to do with
Absolutely